Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 24, Chapter 9. And all crap hit the fan. Let's call this the downfall chapters. Just everything hits the fan. Like, everything really overall in this volume has been pretty chill. I mean, yes, gut punches coming into this whole situation with Vita, but it's been pretty chill. And now things have hit the fan. Like, we're ready. This is, I'm assuming Volume 25 and 26 is it. We are all the furs flying at this point, but we'll see. But yes, thank you so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. Everybody that checks out the video later on, you're cool too. Just kind of sucks that you can't be here for the premiere. I don't know, you probably got a job. What's a job? Thank you guys so much. It means a great deal to me that you guys support the channel. All of your kind words, all that stuff is fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But yes, especially thank you everybody that supports channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week, Panino with a membership, Nicholas with 19 months. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for your longtime support. Abraham with a super and 11 months. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Daniel with a super, Oscar with a super, and Roy's Moist with a super. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You guys mean a great deal to me. But yes, with that said, let's just get into it because we got a lot to talk about with these chapters. My gosh, Chapter 9, 4-day educational Superb Village tour. Rudius went back to the Superb Village with the two knights in tow. He couldn't use teleportation circle, so they took a carriage. Well, that answers that question. Can't take the shortcut there. But a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like maybe a week at least to get there, but seems like a very small area. Arriving in Irilil in a day, Rudius wanted to pick up Shandel, but he still hadn't tracked down the informant. After another sus right there. Now I'm looking back on this little sus there. Shandel, don't turn off. Shandel's a good man. He didn't turn on him. Can't be. After another day, they reached the Earthworm Ravine village. Like last time, it was full of people. The old woman was berating mercenaries with gusto. She's still at it. Come back down here. They're not evil. Rudius wanted to reassure Grandma that it was all right and the people of the forest were safe, but it was still too soon for that. There'd be time after the hunting party was disbanded. After a night's stay, they entered the forest. Oh my gosh, I gotta get voices for all these characters. It's about far enough that we get there by sundown. If we set out in the morning, ask a little bit more of your patience. Lead the way. I don't want to dawdle. My feet hurt. The two soldiers tended to moan. Galaxin had a magnificent handlebar mustache and looked a lot like the official at the reception desk. Yes, now that I've read these two chapters, that sticks out like a sore thumb now. I mean, initially it was like, okay, yeah, they could technically be brothers. But yeah, this now, after reading these two chapters, my assumption here is that, like, specifically he was using that ring probably to make himself look like the receptionist. Don't know. They may have been brothers. His tone and the way that he talked was different, though. Unlike the receptionist, Galaxin was much blunter and came across a bit rough. He was also impatient. Yep. I can see all that now. He paid for their stay at the inn before Rudius could. He gathered firewood before he could act. He even tried to take the lead in a fight, even though Rudius handled it in the end. Rudius couldn't have the guy getting hurt. I doubt he would. As for Sander, he was a long face. But, unlike Nokopara, he wasn't actually a horse. See, I just took that as being, he had a long face. I'm like, he's got to be like a horse person. Nope, he's not really a horse person. Compared to Galaxin, he was much more laid back, wore a dopey smile. And he didn't even draw his blade when a monster showed up. He wasn't much of a talker either, keeping clammed up whenever it wasn't necessary to speak. Funnily enough, though, he was curious about everything. Once he found out that Rudius could use non-vocalized magic, he asked a stream of questions. He was dressed like a soldier, but maybe he was a magician. Yeah, that's a bit curious now, looking back, knowing that is Alexander now, is like, I guess him technically being younger than Gal. Yeah, I can technically see him being a lot more laid back and a lot more curious about things. But yeah, it does sort of indicate the idea that later on he was asking a lot of questions because he wanted to kind of gauge him as a fighter. Sort of, because Rudius doesn't know who he is, he's able to kind of, measure him out, figure out what his abilities are, his capabilities, and use that to his advantage. Which is really funny looking back on it now, because I remember back when Geese first recruited Galfalion, what did Galfalion say? He's like, yeah, you better not, confront me or anything like that because I'm a bad actor. And yeah, it kind of indicates here that he's, rushing to things and jumping forward and taking the lead in battle is sort of a sign that he's not good at acting like somebody that shouldn't be technically doing all that kind of stuff. Rudius sometimes caught Sander, giving him significant stares like he was evaluating him. Yep. Thus, Rudius felt like he was under observation. But there was nothing he could do about that. Rudius knew that he showed up out of the blue and urged a call for the hunting party to be disbanded. The guy probably had orders to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. Even so, it gave Rudius the creeps. They barely looked at Doga, oddly enough. Yep. Despite his appearance, he was an innocent kid and probably didn't have the brains to fool anyone or anything. Yeah, they probably knew that he wasn't going to be something they're going to have to deal with. That eventually he would be out of the picture, essentially. Maybe they worked that out, and that's why they weren't on guard. On the road, Rudius ran a positive information campaign for the Superd. The Superd tribe are good people. They're a little blunt, but so long as you meet them rationally, they will answer in good faith. They're also kind of their children, by the way. We aren't children. Yes, of course, but don't worry. They'll be welcoming you. Unfortunately, they were a bit skeptical about the Superd. If they showed up like this, it wouldn't matter how they were welcomed. Not to mention there'd been a plague in the village until recently. They may even suspect the food. Thankfully, they had the medical team's food there. All the stuff from the Oscar Kingdom, so it should be delicious. Still, Rudius wanted them to see the sights of the Superd village. They'd have a good time together. Finally, they came to the Earthworm Ravine. 2 bridges before them. Why are there 2 bridges? I didn't want the old bridge to collapse when I was halfway across. So, I used Earth magic to build a new one. Huh, which one do we cross? This one. Pointing at his bridge, right away, Galaxin jumped on and set across. Despite the height and lack of handrails, he marched without hesitation. It's probably a good sign right there. Yeah, over time, as this went through, and I think this is probably the point in which the suspicions kind of just clicked right with me. Granted, in the previous Mushoku Mondays, you guys know that I was pretty sus about these two. The fact that, yes, they named the 2 of them, the fact they're being sent there, the fact that the man god's got to know that Rudius is going to go to that throne room and request that hunting party be shut down. A lot of the reason why the hunting party is being put together was probably triggered by Geese himself. He probably put this whole rumor and everything into effect to cause this to even happen. So yes, obviously these 2 people are going to be somehow, by proxy or whatever, tied to the man god. But right here, I think, is where it starts to click even more. Compounding evidence, basically. Rudius wondered if he was even scared. Still, Rudius followed with Sander behind him and Doga on the rear. Please don't collapse. Rudius mumbled under his breath. If it began to collapse, he could save himself, but Galaxin insisted on being first. He was just like Edis. That didn't really dawn on me until I reread this. He's acting a lot like Edis. Galaxin, specifically, is acting a lot like Edis. Maybe Galaxin was a sword god fighter, too. Yeah, he's all right. He's just advanced here. Just advanced here. Don't worry, people. Galaxin's probably just advanced here like everybody else. Are there earth dragons down there? You hail from this country, right, Sander? Didn't you know? I knew, but this is my first time coming here. That was fair. People who had seen all the sights of their home country were few and far between. He was a soldier, so he wasn't about to go into the forest everyone was forbidden from entering. In the Redworm mountain range of Oscar Kingdom, next to no one climbed those set of peaks. This was the same thing. Well, yeah, and technically, again, going back to earlier in this volume, they mentioned the idea that people were not allowed to go. Like I said, forbidden. And forbidden because if somebody goes there and messes with that territory, it could cause those dragons to come out of there and attack the nearby villages. That's not a good thing. Don't rock the boat, basically. Master Rudius, you introduced yourself as a follower of the dragon god Orsted, but have you ever fought an earth dragon? I haven't. You did some spectacular magic on the road. If you fought one, do you think you could win? With his shaky voice, Rudius wondered if he was afraid the earth dragon would climb up. They couldn't see the floor of the ravine, so that made your imagination run wild. Yeah, I kind of wonder now why he had a shaky voice right here. I don't think it at all indicated before that this dude had any sort of sense of fear. Again, he went over to take on a behemoth without even flinching. Like, this guy is seeking to get stronger and achieve great heroic deeds, or heroic actions, really. It's not really deeds, actions, really, because, again, he took down a behemoth that wasn't attacking a village. He wasn't saving the village. He was just taking down something to look impressive. He's trying to achieve this heroic title without really doing heroic deeds. And yes, it does get into later on that he was really questioning this for the sake of the fact that they're going to do coming up here soon. Why would he have a shaky voice? Other than the possibility that he might fear Rudius or fear the dragon god Orsted in a sense. Rudius and the dragon god Orsted are sort of unknowns, and he's not really sure if he could technically take them on. And yes, he just showed him he could do non-verbalized magic, and so he might start questioning, is this Rudius guy extremely powerful? So that might be the shaky voice. I don't think he's afraid of the earthworms. He literally could probably jump down there and just kill them all. He's not afraid of them. He might be hesitant, not necessarily afraid of Rudius. Don't worry. I can't make any promises if we fall into the middle of the swarm, but I can take out at least one or two of them. One or two. All right. Hey, move it. Galaxin had reached the other side and was waiting. Rudius picked up his pace. Yeah, I'm probably messing up the voices here, by the way. I'm just not really committing too much to their voices because it's going to change here in a minute. Once we're across the bridge, we'll practically be on the top of the superb village. Rudius knew that was when the real task would begin. Not really. Not really. It's after that task. Welcome to the Superb Village Educational Tour, guided by Rudius Greyrat and his assistant, Doga. There will be only 2 tourists. The Superb Village has a single entrance, with 2 guards keeping watch to stop monsters from getting inside. The Superb Village have a unique sensory organ, and thanks to that, they never miss an intruder. They are already aware of our approach, but you have nothing to worry about. They are a very friendly race. Why are you talking like that? I'm explaining. Rudius wanted to explain what couldn't be picked up on. He was their guide. That was what the presentation was for. We can see the entrance now. Do you see them? Those are the Superb. See how their faces are pointed this way, even though we're still inside the forest? As Rudius pointed to the village, the 2 soldiers stiffened up. Their hair is green. That's right. But there's nothing to be afraid of. You get along just fine with ogres, with their red skin and horns. Superb hair is a little different. That's all. On the inside, they're just like you. Although, as with any type of people, there will be some cultural differences. If you're friendly, they'll like you. If you're hostile, you'll put them off. They're just like us. Look, please. As Rudius spoke, one of the guards came to them. Rudius needed them to understand the Superb weren't devils. A nice human greeting. Rudius raised his hand and greeted the guard. Jambo! The guard stared doubtfully. hand half raised. He turned to look at his companion. Rudius got carried away. Jambo! What's up, bro? High five! Your hand, like, right here. Acted like they're bros, and the guy's like, what the hell's wrong with this dude? Excuse me. I'm here with the envoys from the Bear Hill Kingdom. I want to show them around the village. Would you mind letting us pass? Go ahead. Reserve told us about this. Thank you very much. I'd also like to talk to the chief if we can. Very well. I'll pass it along. One of the young guards set off, running into the village. Follow me. The 2 followed Rudius into the village, their faces tight. They were nervous. To stop them from fretting, Rudius slowed his pace. Now they're probably preparing themselves. Like, they don't know if they're going to get attacked. Again, these are fighters. They're ready for this. There was a plague going around here until the other day, but humans can't catch it. When I read that, I'm like, how do we even know that again? That was my whole concern about Norn coming there. It's like, we don't know that. What the hell are you saying? Rudius didn't know that for a fact. Soka's tea seemed to cure it, but he didn't know whether the cause was the plague or Vita. Maybe he was already infected. And a month from now, the kingdom would be plunged into a pandemic. Rudius would choose the survival of the Superb over risking infecting humans he didn't know. Damn, that's dark. That was an extremely dark statement, Rudius. And that's not just the Bear Hill Kingdom. Let's be honest. Yes, what he's joking about here, not really joking, but it's honest, yeah. Technically, if I have a choice between bringing these 2 guys in here to show them not to come in here and hunt down the Superb, or to not bring them here, not let them get infected, and they'll just come in here anyway and kill everybody, yeah, I'm going to choose to bring them in here and get them infected. I'm more concerned about the Superb surviving than this kingdom that wants to come in and kill them all. Even though, yes, they technically don't know the truth, honestly. And yes, they're probably being manipulated by the man god. But it's true. I'm going to put the Superb first. But the problem is, it's not just the Bear Hill Kingdom. He doesn't know this for a fact, but he's brought in medical teams from all these other nations to come in and check them out. Now, granted, a lot of them could be taking a lot of precautions. If you have the Asura Kingdom is sending their medical team in there, they're probably masked. They're probably doing a lot of things to keep themselves sanitized and keep them defended from any sort of plague. But there's a good chance that they might still get infected. And they're going to take it right back to the Asura Kingdom. And Cliff and Elnise, well, Cliff specifically, is going to take that back to the Mills continent. So this is going to be like literally a worldwide plague that he's basically going to cause. And yeah, if Norn goes back home, Elnise goes back to Renoa, that whole northern area is getting infected too. So it's a worldwide plague at this point. The only people that are going to be spared is going to be, at this point, it would just be the Demon Continent and the Beggar Continent. And the Vine Continent. They're getting food ready over there. Guess they're making dinner, considering the time. That place is where they grow vegetables. Over on the other side, they're butchering the spoils of the hunt. See the carcass? It's visible now, but that's the invisible monster. They didn't attack us on the way here, but they're in the forest. The invisible wolves become visible when they've been dead for a little while. Just as the name implies, they're wolves. And they're invisible. Just as their name implies, they're wolves. And they're invisible. Thank you. Only Superb can hunt them well. The chief and the others would need to get ready, so Rudius guided them around the village. None of the Superb came near them. Rudius wasn't about to approach them carelessly either. With how standoffish they were being, it may have given a negative impression, but he was worrying too much. All they were seeing were the idyllic scenes you'd find in a village anywhere. It was okay. They were all okay. There's a Millis churchman over there, and an elf. Cliff and Ellen-Lise were walking and pointing at a bundle of papers, probably still hunting for the cause of the disease. Yes, he's the key architect of the Superd's recovery from the sickness. Does Mills' faith recognize the Superd then? Not the entirety of the Mills' faith, but some of the factions are accepting demons. I can at least reassure you the Mills' church isn't going to dispatch an army to the Imperial Kingdom just because you shelter the Superd. The two soldiers didn't reply. Shall I introduce you? No, that's fine. That's very interesting, because Rudius is making sure that they know, and this is actually a good move. I'm actually surprised that he thought of this. But yes, he's bringing these two soldiers of the Imperial Kingdom. In his mind, he thinks this. Obviously, we know the difference. He's taking these two soldiers that are supposed to scout this place out and go back to their king. He's got to let them know, don't worry, the church isn't going to come here. The Mills church, because Cliff is there, it signifies that the church now knows they're there. So yes, the assumption would be, if they know they're there, that means they might come in here to kill them. And thus, that's putting us at odds with the Mills church. Now, they've already pointed out before that the Mills church doesn't have much strength here. And that even if you are of the Mills church, don't say things about the ogres. It's not a good move. So this technically does make sense that he'd want to point this out to them despite that, because he doesn't want that preconceived notion that something's going to happen here. It's actually a good move. Now, here's the interesting part. Reese raised a hand of greeting to Cliff. Cliff nodded and crossed his arms. The sight of him living peacefully in the Superd village would confirm the Superd weren't in danger. Yeah, that's actually a good move there. Cliff looked severe as he eyed Galaxon and Sandor. Rudius needed another play. Damn it! Rudius, you're so close. I wonder what Cliff's seen. I do wonder what Cliff's seen. I don't think Cliff would see past the disguise. I don't think his eye of identification, if he's even using the eye of identification at the time, like he could have it patched. There's no reason why he'd be walking around with the eye out there, because he's currently walking with Ellen-Lise and looking at paperwork. There's no reason for him to be using that. But I wonder if he did look at them. I don't think he would see past the disguise, but he might see the ring. I think later on, I think it was Gal. Gal does note the fact that it was lucky. I think they said they had a glove on or something like that was covering up the ring, because it was a possibility that he could have seen that ring. But yeah, I kind of wonder if he would have been able to see it, and if it would have identified, even if it was covered up. It was like a very close, and yeah, I think based on the fact of how he says that later on, he probably knew. Like, he was probably told, wear that ring to disguise yourself and go in there, but cover the ring. Why? Cover the ring. Don't need to know why, just keep it covered. And he probably figured out later on that was probably why. But yeah, I think Cliff is looking at them severe because he's Cliff. I don't know that he's necessarily using the eye at the time. Oh, look over there. There are Superd children coming this way. Children ran past them, holding balls and laughing amongst themselves. You know where they're coming from. Aren't their tails adorable? All Superd have them. They eventually turn to white spears they carry. Children are sweet and innocent, no matter where you come from, don't you think? The soldiers didn't turn to watch them. Did they hate children? That wasn't it. They were looking at where the children came from. There stood an unsettling figure in a white coat and a black helmet. Galaxon gasped as his hand went to his sword. Rudius quickly put himself in front of him. Dude, he's so badly. you know badly Gal wanted to go. Again, reminder for those that forget, Galfalion wants a rematch with Orsted. He wants to defeat Orsted so badly. Doing all this is giving him the ability to do that. I really wonder what they told him to not. Because they probably told Galfalion, you're going to run into Orsted, but don't do anything yet. They had to have told him, listen to these orders specifically word for word. Do not attack Orsted. Because I don't see any reason why he would not go, this is what I'm here for, go for it. If this is what you're here for, go for it. Unless he's resigned himself to accept the aid of the others. That's the only other thing I can think of. Is that, because I think Geese himself said that you can't do it alone or something like that. I think he alluded to the fact that you can't do it alone. You're going to fight with us. And I was really figuring that at some point he was going to turn on Geese and the Man God to get his fight solo. But it's surprising that right here, he's choosing to not attack. And he totally could. The only reason that he's working for them is for this purpose. Why would he not attack? Could be the side that he was told that Alexander would go with him, and if he steps out of line, Alexander will attack him, and maybe knowing that he can't take on both Orsted and him, he chooses not to do anything. But it's very curious as to why he doesn't act now. It's very curious. And I mean, I even question that later on when they go to leave and they spring their attack on Rudius. Why did you wait until then? Why did you wait to go to the village first? Unless they need to know where the village is. They need to know where Orsted is. Yada, yada, yada. It's very curious. There's a lot of question marks that I have from this chapter as to why they choose to do what, when. And I'm pretty sure it'll eventually explain that, again, they were told this needs to flow like this or it's not going to work. That's not a Superb. Just ignore him. Then who is he? That's my boss, Dragon God Orsted. I know he looks a bit unsettling like that, but he's all right. He'll leave your kingdom once this wraps up. He's harmless and won't linger here. Please, rest assured that. I like how Rudius is like explain it like he's just like don't worry, that beast right there, it's cuddly. It'll leave soon. It's not gonna stay long. He's talking like he's some sort of like wild animal. After a pause that lasted way too long, Galaxin finally replied, I see. I'm really surprised he wouldn't attack. I really am. Orsted looked at them for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. As he left, the soldiers' tension dissipated. And I kind of wonder about Orsted too. Orsted would know who they are. If they will know who they're disguising themselves as. That makes me believe they had to make sure that whoever they were disguised as was recognizable as officials of the Behavioral Kingdom. Because he could probably look at them and go, that's that guy, again, the receptionist, and that's that guy who's like a soldier in the Behavioral Kingdom. Whoever the two of them are disguised as have to be somebody he would recognize and say, that makes sense why they're here. But curious that Orsted wouldn't see them the way that they're standing and posed, especially with Galaxin, that wait, this guy's actually strong. This guy knows his poses. The way that he's posed is a fighter. Suspicious. Though, my prediction of who catches Rudius later on is Orsted. He probably seen something right there and just kept an eye on them. Again, he's not supposed to fight. He's not going to immediately attack the dude. Orsted looked at them for a few seconds, then turned to walk away. As he left, the soldiers' tension dissipated. Orsted's curse had the effect of turning tense situations sour. On the other hand, after seeing Orsted, it should be all clear the Superb were no more than ordinary villagers. See, this guy's like super nasty. These guys are normal. There are many soldiers amongst the Superb, but as you can see, more than half of them are harmless women and children. Please, set aside your preconceptions and look at them without prejudice. Do they look like devils to you? Reese asked that after they'd seen Orsted. He was blatantly implying how much more devilish Orsted looked. He'd apologize to Orsted later. Setting aside, Mr. Dragon God, the village itself seems like any other normal village. Yeah, it looks like my hometown. Interesting. That's an interesting comment. If again, it's literally Gal. Whether Orsted had been effective or not, the impressions weren't bad so far. Marius noticed the young guard from earlier approach. The chief will see you. Thank you. If the two of you would please follow me, I'll introduce you to the chief. The chief was ready to see them. Feeling this was a good sign, Marius guided them to where the chief awaited. Since the hall was still being used as a medical center, they went to a largest house instead. There was 3 waiting for them, one being Reserved. 2 of the elders were still recuperating. Norn stood beside Reserved as they all went inside. She brought tea that she had prepared. His little sister was so considerate. She wouldn't have had the mind to do this sort of thing before. Reese supposed those were the fruits of her formal education. She's trying to be a wife. Stop. Well, Master Rudius, what shall we talk about? The history of the Superb, your current situation, and your request for the kingdom. Very well. After a modest welcome, the meeting went relatively amicably. The Superb chief spoke, and the soldiers heard the tribe's past, present, and future. Also their small wish to live in peace, doing no harm to anyone. As the time passed, the soldiers eased up as well. The village was tranquil, and the chief's manner was gentle. Even Reserve was doing his best to let his guard down. Very well. We will relay all this to His Majesty, just as we heard it. Fear not. We will not let you down. With that, the meeting came to a close. Amongst all this, and again, with the perspective of who Sander is, which again, if I remember correctly, was Alexander. I'm curious if in the future we'll get a perspective of Alexander and how this changes his mind about the Superb. Because again, he wanted to hunt them down. They're the ones that did all these travesties in the past, and he wanted to kill them. Now, granted, a lot of that was driven around the idea of not being a hero, but doing achievements for the sake of being seen as a hero. Again, that chapter gave me a perspective of somebody that wasn't out to do something great. He wasn't seeking to save people. He was seeking to do amazing feats. And that's what he felt like that was going to cause that acceptance of him to be similar. So I don't know necessarily this changes his mind about anything, because if the society still sees the Superb as evil, take him out for the sake of looking great. But I do kind of wonder if him sitting there and breaking bread with them and talking with them, that it might actually change his perspective on wanting to kill the Superb. Because again, that was one of his targets. He had no hesitation about that the moment Geese brought that up. Even Geese himself said that he was hesitant working with somebody like that. With that, the meeting came to a close. The soldiers stayed the night in the village. They would set off home the following day. Rudius set them up in the house they'd lent Shandel and Doga. Doga and Rudius were staying there too. Norn had been staying with Reserve the whole time. She was practically attached to his hip. It was like she was chasing after some reminder of Paul. Oof. And again, that was like the original thought process there, is that she's trying to replace Paul. And it seems like, again, there's too much flagging that it's going to be something different. That hurts in that case, though. And again, it could be just trying to flag it in that direction to make you think that, but that's even more so painful to kind of consider, is the idea of her almost replacing Paul in a way. Again, not maliciously, like, I got to get rid of Paul, he's better, but more of an aspect that she feels that comfort with him that she misses. She misses her father. And this is giving me a reminder of that. I sort of have the same feeling with somebody that I know who was about my father's age, that I felt like sort of a bond with them once my father passed away, because they sort of came in there respectfully saying, you know, I promised him I'd take care of this family. If you guys need anything, if you need something, let me help you there. And there was so much aspects of the idea that, like, he was technically in the same field of business that my father was. And so there's like there's a smell there that's the same as well, like that oil smell and whatnot of a mechanic that was like, oh my gosh, like, he's so like my father in so many ways. And so there was sort of a comfort there whenever he's around. Not that he would ever replace my father, but there's a feeling there of familiarity that does give you comfort. And so I can totally see Norn doing the same thing here. He filled that gap that she had when she had to part ways with Paul. And now that Paul is gone, he could still sort of be, like I said before, that pillar of comfort and strength. But yeah, the fact that Shandel isn't there is very convenient. Yep, Shandel. That place Shandel it was up in is not there right now because he's still looking for their informant. I wonder if Alexander would have kept his mouth shut if he ran to Shandel. I wonder. Before bed, Reese spoke to the two guests. They asked about how he found the Superb village, talked about how it was a fruitful journey. They both looked happy. Again, I kind of feel like there is an element that they could be lying here. And again, I do kind of wonder, again, with specifically Alexander, if he could find that this was a good way of seeing that the Superb weren't bad, and that he doesn't necessarily want to kill an innocent village of people. That everything that he was told was sort of a lie, and that they're actually good people. Whereas before, he would be willing to walk into that village and slaughter everybody. But because he had to keep his identity under wraps, coming in there, he was able to meet them in a neutral state and find out, no, these are good people. I always heard that the Superb were devils, but it's different when you see them with your own eyes, isn't it? It's a regular village with great grub. I'm still not convinced about these monsters you can't see. Invisible wolves, was it? But the forest was weirdly quiet, even quieter than the forest near the capital I go into regularly to hunt. I guess it's true they were hunting the invisible monsters then. The two of them went on, finding this and that to praise about the village until bedtime. Looked like the Superb village educational tour had been a resounding success. Sure. Sure. Again, they could be lying here, they could be putting on act, but going out of their way to talk about the fact that they were actually good people and whatnot, I think that has technically, I think a positive, despite the fact that where this is going, I almost feel like there is still a positive in here. There's still a positive in here where they can at least see the Superb are good people. even if they might not even care. The next day, they decided that Rudius would see them back to the capital. Rudius told them that if they stayed 2 to 3 days, they get to see a real invisible wolf. But they said they had to get back right away to tell the king and get the hunting party disbanded. With that, they set off at once. While Rudius really wanted to use a teleportation circle, he restrained himself. Haste makes waste, as the saying goes. If he slipped up here, it'd be mortifying. If he slipped up here, hey guys, if Rudius slipped up right here, that'd be really bad. Later, guys. Oh, a Doga? Oh, I don't know where Doga is. The Superb should be all right now. It was time to move on to Geese. Rudius wanted to know where the North God and the Ogre God were too. I wonder where the North God is. Channel's information gathering seemed to have stalled for the time being, and they might have already fled the country for somewhere else. That somewhere else could be the Sword Sanctum. He wondered how Sylphie was doing, hoped that she safely made contact with Nina, and how was Edis. He hoped that she hadn't caused any trouble. She was probably all right as long as Roxy was with her, and Roxy sometimes slipped up. He couldn't shake all of his worry. As for Aisha and her group, they'd be okay somehow or another. I like how he has no confidence in Edis or Roxy. Everybody else is fine. Roxy and Edis, yeah, they're going to slip up. Are you going to return alone? Huh? Rudius was walking along, lost in thought, when Galaxin turned around to ask. Rudius looked around. Galaxin, Sander, and him. I'm surprised they pointed it out. That night, he was fast asleep when we set out, not even snoring. Rudius realized Doga wasn't with him. The guy was huge, but he had no presence. More to the point, Rudius didn't realize he had slept in. Oh, well, please don't worry. I'll be able to protect you just fine, even alone. The other two exchanged a look. They didn't seem convinced. Rudius didn't find it a problem. If it came down to a fight, Doga's presence wasn't going to make a difference. Sure, Rudius had also been told not to be alone, mind you. He could have these two wait for him in an Earth fortress while he got Doga. But they were going to meet up with Shandel in the second city. Rudius then realized the forest had opened up into a clearing. They'd reached the Earthworm Ravine. In front of them was 2 bridges. Perfect. They'd crossed the bridge where there were hardly any invisible wolves, so they'd be relatively safe. They could wait for him once they crossed to the other side. I'll go first. Galaxin took the lead, like it was the natural order. Sander and Rudius followed him. Maybe he should have taken the rear to make sure they didn't fall. Rudius kept on alert, in case they fell. Suddenly, Galaxin stopped. Here goes. Here's the beginning of the crap hitting the fan. Here's the beginning of the hitting the fan. Just spraying everywhere. What's wrong? Galaxin turned back as Rudius asked. His face was blank. It didn't suit his magnificent mustache. You gonna do it? The question was directed at Sander. Rudius turned to see him shrug. He's all yours. Go ahead. What are they talking about? Guys, if you have something to discuss, can it wait till we get across the bridge? Galaxin exhaled, with something a bit like a sigh. Then moved his right hand to his left wrist. While Rudius wondered what was going on, he hooked his finger into his gauntlet and slowly peeled off his glove. I thought you'd notice. Rudius's heart was hammering in his chest. There on his finger was a ring. A ring he recognized. When I saw Cliff Grimoire with that eye of identification, I had my heart in my mouth. Without the glove, he'd have got us. Again, assuming that he can see things underneath, but again that he was actually using his eye. Rudius turned and saw Sander had taken off his glove as well. He wore the same ring. The ring was the same as what was on his own finger, the magical implement from the Ostro Kingdom that changed your face. Galaxin exhaled deeply. I gotta switch my voice now. Gotta switch. I wasn't sure when I wanted to switch the voice. I mean, technically it's not supposed to be changing their voice, but it's difficult. I mean, I'm not a professional voice actor, people. I'm not a professional voice actor. I try to make this as good as possible for y'all. I'm sorry. Those stupid theatrics. My shoulders are all nutted up. He then took off the ring. Before Rudius's eyes, his face began to change. His mustache vanished and replaced with a face of a middle-aged man in his 40s, a face like a hungry wolf that suited his way of speaking. He was an entirely different person. The only problem is I don't remember Alexander's voice. I have a message from Geese. Don't assume any magic item's the only one. Turning back, Sander's face changed as well. He wasn't Horseface anymore. He was now a kid with black hair and a face still round with the last traces of puppy fat. I have to say, I'm disappointed. I had such high hopes for you after you defeated Auber. Yeah, that makes sense that he knows Auber. Again, Norse style. Rudius was speechless, his mouth dry. The two of them looked at him with a murderous hostility. Geese said, if you get boss into a tight space with bad footing, all of his tricks will fizzle. I didn't expect you to wander so obligingly and let yourself get flanked. Who are you? Galfalion, Sword God Fighter. just Sword God Fighter. I'm one of those Sword God Fighters. I am North God Kalman III. Alexander right back. And there is a confirmation on what the two individuals that Geese has recruited. It all becomes confirmed. They both spoke at once, the former sword god Galfalion and the North God Kalman III. They had used Geese's name. Both of them were Rudius's enemies. The moment he was sure of that, Rudius reached for his waist to release the scroll. But his arm didn't move. Yeah, that was not going to work. All this build up for that damn thing, and you had to have it on your freaking waist. Like, why do you not have it like on your fingertip or something so you can go? No, you have to have it down here, so you have to do this whole thing. You're going to lose an arm before you can do that. The flaws of this suit is now being shown. But yes, his arm didn't move. Instead, his arm fell before his eyes, hit the bridge, then plunged into the ravine. Galfalion had drawn his sword. He cut off his arm. He realized it too late. At last, a wave of excruciating pain raced through Rudius as he cried out. He tried to cover up the stump of his right arm, but his left arm wouldn't move either. It wasn't there. Gone. Damn. We need like an Orsted to show up here real quick to restore his arms. Out of the corner of his eye, his left arm fell into the ravine. This is keeping true. This is all really keeping true to the canon that is Rudius. Rudius, why can you not keep your damn limbs on? Rudius just cannot keep his limbs to himself. I think it's every single combat sequence where there's somebody that's not super incredibly weak. Every time he runs into somebody that's actually powerful, goodbye limbs. The Hydra, goodbye limb. Orsted, goodbye limb. Auber, goodbye limb. Galfalion, goodbye limb. Every time. So that's your face, eh? Not too shabby. Way prettier than that mug you had on before. Gal looked at Rudius' face and laughed. When his arm fell, the ring stopped working. Boss cast magic from his hands. Cut him off, and you might be able to scuttle him. Blood poured from both stumps. He was right. Rudius couldn't use magic, as though his circuits that fired magic had been in both those arms. It wouldn't come out. This is interesting. When he came to... I know I'm cutting off in the middle of this whole thing. This is interesting. When he pointed this out, I'm kind of like, yeah, I never really thought about that before. It is kind of curious that Rudius has never really kind of looked into some other way of casting spells besides sort of, again, seeing his arms as almost like circuits. It does beg the question of the idea, is the arms necessary as a circuit to deliver the spells themselves? Again, he's technically created a suit of armor that he will now pour mana into in order to create an effect. But why can he not do that with any limb? Why can he not do that with his own mouth? Make sort of, I guess, could you, in theory, in the logic of this world, if you're casting a spell through your arm and it's seemingly that you're creating these spell circuits through that point, or is that just a delivery of the mana itself is to that point and you're just envisioning it that way, can you envision equally to say your tongue do the same thing? Envision your tongue is the circuitry that your spell is coming out of. It begs the question, if he's still able to pour mana into his armor, that means he doesn't need his arms to do that. But is there still a circuitry needed to produce the spell? I'm curious if after what happens here, because obviously Rudius is not going to die. I doubt Rudius. I mean, it could be a crazy twist that we go into volume 25 and Rudius is literally dead and it moves on to somebody else to finish off the entire story. But it makes me wonder if after this, Rudius is going to go, I have to figure out, can I cast spells without arms? Because I'm really good at losing my arms. Really good at that. We could have beaten him without all this, couldn't we? No, there's no telling what might have happened when you fight fair and square. Geese was being real cautious. I don't think so. When he had that bodyguard, Doga, that was one thing. I doubt I'd lose to him alone. That's an interesting statement. That is a very interesting statement. I don't think so. When he had that bodyguard, Doga, that was one thing. I think this might be Alexander saying this. It's not... let me double check. I think that was Alexander saying that. Yeah, this sucks. This is one of the things I do criticize this series for. It doesn't really... it doesn't specify who's saying what. It just says, quote, we could have beaten him without doing all this, couldn't we? Nah, there's no telling what might happen when you fight fair and square. Geese was being real cautious. I don't think so. When he had that bodyguard, Doga, that was one thing. I doubt I'd lose to him alone. So it doesn't specify who's saying that last line, and I'm very curious about that last line. Because it's almost saying that no matter what, what's implied here is that, wait, Geese was being cautious. That's why we had to do all this stuff. Yeah, but I doubt I would have a problem with this guy. Look at him. He ain't got no limbs. This dude's easy. I took him out like that. But when he had that bodyguard, Doga, that's one thing. It almost implies that, yes, if Doga was there, it could have been more difficult. And it does imply the fact that Geese told them, don't do anything when Doga's there. Because yes, even if you want to put aside that Doga's not some incredible fighter, I'm not going to state that Doga's he could be, like a god tier fighter or anything like that. But simply him being there would have at least give Rudius a shield. And that would be all Rudius would need to be able to take them all down. If Rudius has a little bit of a gap, he's going to take you out. But it has always been, to this day, has always been, if Rudius gets caught off guard, he's done because he just has no way of protecting himself. But whenever it comes to Rudius having the advantage, having distance, he destroys stuff. That's always been the case. He is a glass cannon. The magic armor helps him a lot with this, but he's still a glass cannon. And even mentions later on, even with that magic armor, he nearly dies to the guy's blade. And it wasn't his actual blade. It was a crappy soldier blade. But at least here again, it implies we needed to get Doga out of the picture. We couldn't do this with Doga here. Interesting. Reese's magic wouldn't come out of his arms. When Reese realized that, he started sending magic to his armor. Reese upped the output into his leg segments, then turned. Facing Alexander, he launched. He wasn't attacking. He was aiming past him to slip past and get back to the superb village. Whoopsie. Something hit Rudius in the back. It was a sword, a slash that cut through the magic armor like butter, the sword of light. Reese's torso was split in two, or was it? Reese thought it was, but then feeling an impact on his back didn't make much sense. Suddenly, Reese felt weightless. He was falling, his vision spinning, but he could make out Gal and Alexander looking down from the edge of the crumbling bridge. Reese realized that he kicked down full force with his version 2 and punched a hole in the bridge. He continued to fall. With both his arms gone, nothing he could do. He continued to fall. All the power had left his body. Fear rose in its place. He'd be dead in a moment. Just as he surrendered to inevitable death, something hit his body hard, and he blacked out. Yeah, I don't think he hit the ground. I think Orsted snagged him. Now, it'd be really funny if it was Doga. Doga just appears out of nowhere and starts jumping across this ravine and catches Rudius mid-air. That big old Doga, like, literally launching across this, what was it? What did they say? Like a quarter-mile distance? And catches Rudius and runs off with him. It's got to be Orsted. And no doubt it's Orsted. But yeah, damn. Again, kind of seen this coming. I kind of seen the fact that, yes, these two were going to be working for the Vanguard that came with them. My initial impression was to get the location of the Superb, and that could still be it. That could still technically be it. But it is very kind of questioning right here why they don't just kill Rudius. Why did they not just cut his head off? Why slice his arms off and then stand there and talk? Why did they not just kill Rudius? It reeks of plot armor. I'm sorry. There's a side of me that says this reeks of plot armor. That if they had such a jump on Rudius, two god tier people can't just finish him off like that. It almost feels like they're wanting him to not die. And they kind of allude a little bit again here in a second. But I do really feel like there's the other side that I think this is going to explain that they didn't want to kill him yet. Galfalion looked down into the ravine Reese tumbled into and sighed. Hey, fell? Alexander peered into the ravine too. His brows furrowed dubiously. Did you hold back in the end there, Gal? Almost looked like you didn't cut through him. Like hell. It's this. Gal held up his sword. It snapped off at the hilt. As anyone who knew their stuff could tell, the sword was cast steel. One of those distributed to regular soldiers of Imperial Kingdom, but it was a sword made to last. That bastard's armor's a whole lot harder than I thought. Again, why? Why would you not just chop off his head? Maybe still an aspect there of... I kind of do wonder if this is... Because again, it seems like all the signs are pointing to they were supposed to kill Rudius right here. But there's a side of me that almost wonders if... Would Galfalion purposely not kill Rudius? Now, he did ask Alexander if he wanted to do it. Like, you going to do it? He's like, oh, no, you can do it. And then Galfalion does it. So if Galfalion had his own wishes and ambitions here not to kill Rudius, he wouldn't have Alexander do it in his place. It's, again, one side of me feels like this is plot armor, and why would they not be able to kill him when they had this jump on him? But the other side does make me believe that there might be something else working in play here. And again, it could technically be destiny. It could still be the aspect of destiny still preventing them from landing that blow. I don't know. Be that as it may, Galfalion was a master of the blade. and the craftsman never blamed his tool. There was no need to use a famous blade to cut up a flesh and blood opponent. The cast sword should have been more than enough, but Rudius' armor had been more resilient than he had counted for. He'd met stronger resistance than he had ever encountered before. Should have brought my own sword. Gal tossed the sword into the ravine. Don't beat yourself up about it. Alexander shrugged and continued to stare down the ravine. If we had our own swords, our identities would have been exposed. Well, what now? Do we go down there and finish the job? Alexander hummed indecisively. After he lost his arm, he couldn't use magic. So long as that wasn't an act, I think we're in the clear. And it's crawling with earth dragons down there. He said himself. He could take one or two, but definitely not a swarm. Alexander said that conclusively. He also couldn't be bothered with climbing all the way down to check if Rudius was dead. Killing Rudius had never been the goal. I think that was the point where I remember there was some point here where it throws a wrench in my thought process. Killing Rudius had never been the goal. Again, does that mean that Geese told them? I mean, you can throw him off, you could do whatever, but you don't really need to kill him. Just, make him lose his footing. Chop off his arms. That'll be enough. Maybe Geese never told them to kill Rudius. Just mess him up. And again, that could be mainly because Geese knows he needs to put something really strong into effect to make this last big battle work. And that it's not time yet. I don't know. I'm going to put aside plot armor and keep to this is probably an aspect of destiny and that Geese wants this whole thing to play out a certain way for them to overcome that destiny. Because again, I also kind of wonder why they don't go back and get Orsted. They talk about right here. Right. That's our biggest obstacle out of the way. We heading back now? I can't wait for the fight with Orsted. Alexander sighed. Hey, I'll let you have Rudius, so you'll let me have Orsted, right? The two of them would go back across the crumbling bridge, shooting the breeze like nothing of importance happened. They would go back to the road that led to the capital, Berhero Kingdom. You just want to go up the rankings of 7 great powers. What does it matter if I go first? You're wrong. I don't want a higher ranking. What I want is to be a hero. I want to be a great hero, like my father was. A greater North god than he was. Ha! Again, it's odd they're going back to the Berhero Kingdom. That makes me believe that they're not ready for Orsted. Again, if they killed Rudius, what's the only other goal? Orsted, and they're done. Kill Rudius. Kill Orsted. Done. They have no reason to go back to the... Again, this all makes me believe this is all pre-plotted. Follow this step by step. Don't attack Orsted yet. Like Geese told them, you have to do this in sequence. Do not go back to that village. Do not confront Orsted. You will lose. It's very interesting. No one followed them. No one was watching this place. Not even a Superd with their third eye. In the aftermath of the chaos caused by the plague, their hunting parties weren't venturing far from the village. If someone had been watching, the two men wouldn't have launched their attack. Again, they were specifically told, you have to do it alone. No skipping your turn. Come on, let's stick to the plan. That was one of the conditions. Again, it's too damn slow, and after Vita jumped the gun, who gives a rat's ass about the plan anymore? With that, Galfalion and Alexander Rabak melted into the trees. The ravine was empty. Only the crumbling bridge remained. Only the bridge and silence. I think Orsted caught him. I have no doubt that Orsted has been keeping a distance. And again, I think that he probably seen something in Galfalion when he was in the village. He probably noticed something, but he didn't speak up because he didn't want to mess up what Rudius is doing. And he may have assumed that Rudius knew. It might be one of those stupid situations where people assume that Rudius knows that something is happening and he doesn't really know. So he probably just kept an eye out from a distance. And then at this point, okay, yeah, he got attacked. Jump in there. And again, he's not going to face off those guys directly because again, he's not supposed to be fighting. So I think Orsted probably saved him. And again, Orsted's going to have to save him. Somebody has to save him and bring him to Orsted at least, because he ain't got no limbs. Unless somebody catches him, takes him off somewhere, and then Rudius goes, hit that button on the suit of armor and it dispatches a high tier healing spell and it, restores him. That could be as well. But yeah, crap hit the fan. It gets worse, and it gets worse as we go into chapter 10, Disappearance. This is where everything starts really hitting the fan. In the Magic City of Sarai, in an office in the outskirts of the city, a young elf woman was copying words written on a contact tablet onto paper. Her name was Fariestia. Fari, or Tia, to her friends. We finally get her name. A certain executive at a company still couldn't remember her name. Unbeknownst to Rudius, Fariestia was the real name of Little Miss Elf, the receptionist. She was in charge while the CEO of the office was out. Right. From Sylphiette, Nina is pregnant, so she won't be able to support us. I'm heading to Berhero Kingdom now. I guess I should forward this. Her job was to take all the info everyone had sent, put it onto paper for Rudius and Orsted. When the message was urgent, however, she was permitted to use her own discretion to forward it to another tablet. The thing was, these communications were full of words like God and King. So it was hard for any ordinary middle-class girl to decide what was important. Yeah, everything seems really important. Should I just forward it all? Okay, let's forward it. It was Aisha who had picked her for the job. Aisha had hired her based on a stringent criteria. Through a rigorous selection process, you might think that anyone could do for Orsa's paperwork. But her position handled large volumes of information that couldn't be allowed to leak. Faria had been born in the capital of the kingdom of Renoa. Her father was an elf who'd been a roaming adventurer. Her mother was a human, the daughter of wealthy merchants. She was the youngest of 3 siblings. Because she was a girl, she wasn't taught how to be a merchant, and so she had never aspired to it. However, running around a merchant's house since infancy meant she'd grown up watching crafty merchants. Yeah, this makes me believe that here it is right here. Every time they talk about an elf being somewhere in the world, oh, it's got to be Ellen Lee's child. It's got to be somehow tied in with Ellen Lee's, right? That background would come in handy later on. When she started at the University of Magic, she took a class taught by an intelligence agent on a whim and got excellent grades. That was a feature that caught Aisha's sharp eyes. There was others more skilled at handling information, but she was Orsted's pick. In Orsted's estimation, the chances of her becoming an enemy were low. First, I'll send this to Pert Village. Who else? After that? Oh, Edis. Edis might be happy to hear that Nina's pregnant. She was sitting in the corner of the CEO's office, contact tablet in front of her. She toiled over it, magic crystal in hand, sending messages off to the Superb Village, Third City, and Irilo. A shadow fell over her back. Run, receptionist girl, run. Phew, that's that. Huh? Faria turned around and gaped. An enormous figure filled her vision. Are you here to see, Sir Orsted? Before her was a body like a steel drum with 2 arms thick as tree trunks. She saw bright red skin, massive horns, a jaw like a cooking pot from which 2 long tusks protruded. An ogre. There's the nail on that one right there. there's that whole theory right there pretty much confirmed. Bodyguard got to them. Knew that was coming. Orsted, woman. Sorry? The ogre swung its arms out, sending the contact tablet flying, and the wall of the office. You enemy, fight me? The ogre clenched its fist, then hurled it at Faria. The fist filled her vision. It was enormous, twice the size of her head. Hair grew from the back of its coarse hands and fingers. The calluses around the knuckles implied a long history of violence. After seeing the wall behind her pulverized, she knew what would happen if it hit her. I'm not, Faria cried out at last, as she crumpled to the ground. All the strength had gone from her legs, as she thought they'd been pulverized too. She couldn't flee. The only thought in her mind was that she was going to die. Then you out. You no fight. I no fight. The ogre grinned and reached for her. Faria shrieked as she shrank away from the open and outstretched hand. For a fraction of a second, she thought she was going to be crushed to death. But then the ogre picked her up with an unexpected gentleness and tossed her out of the hole that she had just made. Faria went shooting from the office at a terrifying speed, bounced twice, rolled, and came to a stop. Every inch of her hurt. Her brain was telling her she had to run. If she didn't, she'd be killed. Her body was screaming that it didn't want to die. Her mouth wouldn't produce words, just pathetic squeaks. Crashing into the ground seemed to have shocked her legs back to life. Trembling, she rose to her feet like a newborn lamb. She ran a few steps, then fell. She tried 3 more times, then heard the thunderous rumbling behind her. Turning, the walls of the office crumbled. The red ogre raged at the building, sending stone and timber flying until there was no traces of the original structure. Faria forgot about running. She stared in abject shock as the office was reduced to rubble. There was nothing she could do but watch, tormented by her powerlessness. She prayed the red ogre wouldn't emerge from the rubble, prayed that it wouldn't come this way, even as the noise faded. She kept praying until it passed her by, coming to see what the noise was, came and took her in. That day, all the teleportation circles, drawn by Rudius Greyback, stopped glowing. Again, the fan is getting so much scrap hitting it right now. It's getting so much scrap hitting it right now. I do like to note the fact that the moment that the ogre seen that she was not an enemy, gently picked her up. Yes, threw her, but gently picked her up and tossed her. And said that everything hurt, but she at least acknowledged, you're not enemy, get out of here. Get out of the way, basically. Which is kind of a nice sign here that this person isn't just some kind of evil ogre that wants to kill everything in its path, that acknowledges what's right and wrong at least. But yes, 1, confirm the fact that the ogres are probably for sure working for them, and 2, this was a target. And I knew from the moment that Rudius started making this place, it was going to be a target eventually. there was no doubt in my mind eventually this place was going to get destroyed. The problem is that, yes, technically, usually Orsted's always there. In a lot of cases, Orsted's in the office. But it is kind of dumb that Rudius had never had something else there to protect the place. Like, if this is your central hub, why do you not have somebody always there to protect the place? Like, this girl's there alone. This girl's there alone. And it has always implied that the only two people that have ever been in that place that could defend it is Rudius and Orsted. Why had Rudius never got somebody else to protect that place is sort of... It is kind of dumb. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that it's kind of dumb that Rudius never had somebody else there to defend the place. Because eventually, again, somebody's going to discover where that place is. Now, yes, the question mark does remain. If the man god can't see Orsted, can't see Rudius, how could it have ever figured out where that's at? My argument there, and again, it was the same argument that I had with the whole situation with Petagoose, even though everybody was like, oh my gosh, they would not know what they're doing up there because they can't see what Petagoose they're doing up there with the whole sending Nanahoshi back. Through informants, they'll eventually find out that, yes, this Faria girl was sent there, that there's something that's there right there. Why are they always right there where I can't see? There's this one place I can't ever see. Or yes, that somebody has interacted with that building. Could be a Zenoba, through Zenoba or something like that. Looking to Zenoba's future and seeing that he goes to that location at some point. There's a million different ways they could possibly find out the location of this. And it's still kind of surprising that Rudius never had something there to protect it. Anyway, at least she didn't get killed. At least Faria didn't die. The dream team, time for the dream team, Roxy and Edis, were in a forest. The third city of Herlo. As a rule, the oceans of this world were province of either merfolk or fishermen, who together made up the ocean tribe. Except for set areas of water, the land dwellers were forbidden from crossing. Right there, it's saying that's the ocean tribe. Was the earlier what we were talking about with the history of Bahuril, were they talking about the ocean tribe, or were they talking about sea tribe? Because that was a dumb statement there that I felt like, I thought it was a Seven Seas moment. Yeah, they talked about the ocean tribe back there. Yeah, back when we were talking about like the history of the ogres, they were talking about that the ogres were under attack by the ocean tribe. And back then I assumed that it was sea folk, because again, they were talking about, you know, they were attacked by them, and the only thing I can think about ocean tribe is attacking them is gotta be sea folk. And they said they were headquartered in a labyrinth, that they had to go into their headquarters, which was in a labyrinth. And right here, they're finally talking about who the ocean tribe is. And they're saying that it's merfolk and fishermen that make up the ocean tribe, which that's a very interesting combination there. Fishermen, which you assume is just any race that's just fishing there, and merfolk, which again you would assume is probably sea folk. Now, it could be that merfolk are a breed of sea folk. This is where it's kind of getting a little weird, and I wonder if this is just botched new translation separate from the old translations. Together they made the ocean tribe. Except set areas of water, the land dwellers were forbidden from crossing. Fishing in the vicinity of some of the port towns was tolerated, but the ocean tribe would sink any boats that ventured beyond those limits. Things were a little different in Herolil. The stretch of ocean between the third city of Herolil and the Ogre Island belonged to the Bahuril Kingdom. Yeah, that's kind of always been the interesting thing about the fact that there's like almost this agreement across the sea folk and the land dwellers, is that they're allowed to go these specific routes to each of the continents. Like that they've gotten this agreement that you don't go outside of there, which is always very interesting. Again, that was something they brought in a long time ago when the question mark came. Why won't they just go straight from the demon continent straight across to the central continent? Why do they have to go all the way down here or go all the way up here? It's because there's this agreement. When the kingdom was founded, they cleared the fishermen from the area and claimed it. Since then, the fishing industry had prospered in the third city. There was seafood on offer here that couldn't be found anywhere else, at least in theory. And again, that sort of makes me believe that way back there when the ogres were having that conflict with the ocean tribe, that upon defeating them right there, they gained control of that port right there. I'm getting sick of fish. It's all we've been eating lately. You are? But it's delicious. On the outskirts of the city lay a forest surrounded by a fence. The fence was less to prevent trespassers and more to stop monsters from getting out. Edison and Roxy walked through the forest, munching dried fish. Yeah, but it's salty. Why do they put so much salt in it? I expect that's to preserve it. Why don't they preserve it with ice magic, like Rudius does? Ice magic isn't something that just anybody can use. Roxy laughed a little at Edis's grumbling. Edis usually wasn't one to complain about food, but it was true they were eating a lot of salted fish. Yeah, it is true. She doesn't really complain much. Despite the city's reputation for great seafood, they hadn't found any fresh stuff in Herolil. The reason for this soon became clear. It was the Ogre Island, which was a day's journey by boat from the third city. The men of the Ogre Island were excellent fishermen. Usually they work with the humans to catch fish around the island. At present, the Ogre men weren't fishing. They kept saying a battle was coming, and they were getting ready. Because of that, Supply was running lower than usual in the port. Roxy and Edis had promptly ascertained why the ogres were preparing. They were going to join the hunting party on orders of their leader, the ogre god. The ogre god Marta was in the second city of Erlo. Yeah, that makes me wonder how many ogres there are. Like, it really makes me wonder how many ogres again. Again, I'm assuming that the one that went to attack the office is probably one of them. And it makes me wonder, like, again, this is like, they're building a war. And again, that does technically make sense. I can see now, knowing that for a fact now, that the ogres are working for, possibly through proxy with the man god. And again, probably through the request of Bodigadi. It makes me believe now there's probably a good chance that the king himself is not in contact with Geese or the man god. It might just be simply Bodigadi had to go to the ogres and tell the ogres, do this, help me with this. This is dangerous. We gotta do this. And the ogres, through the king himself, probably pressuring the king himself, probably got them to go along with this. Which is odd because, if I remember correctly, the ogre tribe themselves stayed out of the conflict before. That was why they weren't seen as bad or anything like that. The ogre tribe themselves stayed out of the human-demon war, if I remember correctly. So it's odd that they would get involved with this war, which makes you believe that there could be possibly something the man god was manipulating here. I don't see them, in that respect, getting involved with Bodigadi's request. Now Roxy and Edis were heading for a cave where the teleportation circle was to tell Rudius what they had learned. They'd been a little delayed in getting the message out, but when they last checked the tablet, it had been good news. The Superb tribe was recovering, and negotiations went well with the kingdom. They weren't going to come back and find everything on fire. Right. The ogre tribe protects the Burhel kingdom. I suppose that means that the agreement is still in effect. I don't understand why he's in the second city, and not in the capital or in the third, though. Geese must be on the move. It's too early to say that for sure. The ogre god might just be surveying the location on its own. There's still a chance that we can win his allegiance, so we can't go antagonizing him. While Roxy said that, at the same time, she sensed something wasn't quite right. They could see that he wasn't acting as he usually would. Was it the enemy's plan? Or were they not seeing the full picture? At least things were going smoothly. Reus had saved the Superb village, and now the Superb were his allies. Roxy and Edis might not have obtained information on Geese, but they located the ogre god. Roxy had no reason to think so, but she wondered if maybe Zenoba had found something on the North god in the capital. Things were going well enough that she suspected he might have. At the same time, she felt a sense of dread. After thinking about it for days, she decided it reminded her of the dread that she felt when she got trapped in the teleportation labyrinth. That didn't really make me laugh the first time I read it, but that technically does make sense. Why am I feeling like suddenly, like when I was in teleportation labyrinth and I was getting stuck behind these stupid teleportations? A teleportation's been shut down. The sense that everything looked like it was going well, but they missed something important. Anytime a task was going well for her, she always got tripped up. That's the other joke I gotta say. She was well aware of this. Hey, Roxy, after this report is done, how about we go meet up with Rudius? You never let that drop, do you, Edis? I just want to see Richard already. I'll introduce him to you. I have actually met him once. Realizing where the dread was coming from, Roxy had a wry smile. Rudius and Edis weren't afraid of Superb at all. She knew intellectually that the Superb were not the devils that they were said to be, but no matter what she did, she still stiffened up the moment they mentioned them. She'd been told an old story about them ever since she could remember. Even so, she was going to have to meet them. Rudius and Edis were indebted to Richard. He was their old companion. Roxy ought to introduce herself to him, but she still couldn't stop her heart from quailing. If she just met him, talked to him, spent time together, that would surely change. But what if it didn't? She's still terrified of him, and she doesn't want to have that bad impression, I guess, still. Doesn't want to let Rudius down or something. Maybe you're right. It might be a good idea to go to the second city while we have a chance to pin down Ogre God Marta. He might head elsewhere before long. They learned all they could do in the third city for the moment. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to leave their post for a little while and visit Superb village. With that thought, Roxy came to a halt before the cave they set up for the teleportation circle. Its entrance was a hole large enough for a person to enter, crouching, camouflaged by branches and foliage. The original inhabitant, a bear, had attacked them when they came near it, so Edis cut it up, and they had eaten it. The size and placement of the cave was just right, so they repurposed it. Pushing aside the branches, they went inside. It was about 20 meters deep and decently spacious. The only problem was that it stank of bear. The teleportation circle and contact tablet were right in the back, but something was a little off about the circle. It was in the middle of a forest, saturated by magical energy. It should have been glowing blue, constantly active. For some reason, it was dark. What's going on? Give me a minute. Keeping calm, Roxy examined the circle. thinking that perhaps she had made a mistake. The circle was malfunctioning. That had to be it. But she examined it. She couldn't see any problems. It had been working fine up until the other day, and there was no sign of anyone entering the cave. Hey, this isn't working either. Roxy looked up to see Edis crouching down beside the contact tablet. The light had gone from the tablet as well. Roxy hurried over and tried to push magic into it, along with random string of characters. It didn't respond. Roxy stood there at a loss. What could have possibly caused this? This was wrong. The teleportation circle was one thing, but Orsted made the tablet. She'd help replicate them. It was inconceivable that they would be faulty. They wouldn't just stop working like that. That's obvious. Edis stated that, but she wasn't confused. Roxy wondered if she knew what the cause was. Edis folded her arms, looking at the tablet, and announced, "Something happened." Something happened. Yes, that's... If nothing happened, this wouldn't... Something struck Roxy. Yeah, this is interesting. Again, typically a typical Roxy moment here, which it's a logical thinking. Let's be honest. It's not really just a Roxy thing. It's just logical thinking here. They come in here, everything's not working. Her immediate assumption is, okay, I messed up on the circle somewhere. That's the first thing you're going to check. It's like when I used to work for like fixing computers a long time ago. It was always the aspect of what do you do first when a computer isn't booting? You check the power cable. It's always the simplest thing to check. And then you're going to check the next most simplest idea that you can, it's always like a process of elimination, but it's always starting with the most simplest thing. And yeah, for her coming up to this, okay, it's obvious that there's probably something on this side. I probably did something wrong. And yeah, probably the idea of not being perfect. And so she's going to be checking, okay, let's make sure the side's working first. But then the contact tablet's out. Suddenly, out right there, it's like flags. There's no way that Orsted messed that up. I could mess this up, but Orsted's not messing that up. There's a logical mindset there, even though we Roxy fans know she's perfect and she's cute because she thinks that she's not perfect. It makes her cute. But I love Edis' response. Something happened. Thank you. Thank you, Edis. Something struck Roxy. Where did something happen? Not here. There was no sign that anyone had been here. The entrance was perfectly concealed. Neither man nor beast had come into the cave. It must have been somewhere else then. But the teleportation circle and the contact tablets needed a counterpart in order to function. If you lost one, the other would automatically stop working. There was nothing wrong with the ones here. What about the ones they were connected to? Something happened in Shiraya. Lada's face appeared in Roxy's mind, followed by all their children. Lucy, Otis, Sieg, also Lilia, and Zenith, who were looking after them. If something was wrong in Shiraya, all of them were. Roxy leapt to her feet and ran out of the cave. If this teleportation circle was no good, she'd find another one. After a few steps, she stopped. Roxy considered herself in the enemy's shoes. If she attacked the office in Shiraya, what would she do to the other magic circles? She wouldn't just leave them be. She'd destroy them all. What do we do? What are we supposed to do? Was someone already dealing with this threat? According to the last message, Orsted wasn't in Shiraya right now. If someone was attacking the office, was there anyone to defend it? Roxy! Roxy jolted back to herself. Tell me what's going on. The teleportation circle and contact tablets have been deactivated. There's no problem on our end. So Orsted's office in Shiraya has probably been attacked. It's possible they attacked our house at the same time. Right now, there's no one at the house. Right. Does Rudius know about this? I don't know. He might. Edis stood, staying at the same pose, and pulling her chin with the corner of her mouth turned down. After a moment, she looked up again, arriving at an answer. The house will be fine. Sylphie's there. Huh? Sylphie just went to the Sword Sanctum. Sylphie said that when Rudius is away, she'll protect the house, so it's fine. I love this. Roxy didn't reply. She thought of it absurd. But then thinking again, they didn't know when the circle was deactivated. Sylphie wasn't using teleportation circle at the office. She'd use the old teleportation ruins. Even if she couldn't join them in Berhil, she could get back to Shiraya. All they could do was leave it to her. You're right. That's actually a very interesting point there. That yes, this is basically Roxy trying to overthink this. That's the obvious concern there is that yes, if somebody attacked the circles, they might be going after Rudius' family. Because again, it's not just Rudius. It's not just his wives. It's not just Orsted. It is every offspring of Rudius as well. Every child of Rudius is an ally of Orsted. So even if they get rid of Rudius, they're still going to grow up and have children for that war. Like, it's still going to happen. Yeah, technically them directly or their children will be a part of that war. And so, yes, they're obviously going to be a threat. They're going to be a danger. They're going to be something they're going to go after. So that makes sense to me that, yes, the moment they take down that place, they're probably going to go right to his house and take out his children, which, yeah, probably the most likely person that will be there for that, hopefully, will be Sylphie, that she'll get back there in time. I can't really think of anybody else there. I mean, they're probably going to have, hopefully, some people from the mercenary band going there to keep an eye on the place, and hopefully a lot of them can at least stall whoever's coming to attack. But yeah. Geese is going for the heart of Rudius while he's busy over elsewhere. But yes, I love this. Roxy's kind of like, this, and this. This is all going on. And yeah, it sounds stupid saying, Sylphie's got it. Wait, why would you say that? Well, she said that when Rudius is away, she protects the house. But she's not currently. She's going to the Sword Sanctum. Nope. She said she was going to protect the house, so it's fine. Okay, yeah, technically it makes sense in a way. You're right, sure. There was also Petagus. Roxy was a demon, so he was cold to her, but he was close to Rudius. He'd even give Sig a name of his own design. She couldn't guess what he would do, but there was a whistle back at the house to call the servants. If something happened, Lilia would use it. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but the whistle, did they set it up to where they could use it at the house? I don't think so. They was always having to go to that ruins where the Seven Great Powers monument was. Maybe they set something up there. That wasn't all. Rudius had summoned Leo in case something like this would happen. I wonder if we'll actually get to see Leo in action too. If he didn't do anything now, what was the point in having him? There were plenty of safety measures in place. The mercenary band was still there, and so were the crafters at Zenoba's store. If it came down to it, the teachers of the university would help too. Yeah, but they're not there at the house. Maybe something blows up the area, I guess. What it sounds like is she's kind of getting set up here for the idea that there's going to be a group coming after the city to go after their home. All that made Roxy feel a little better. They just had to keep going. She and Edis could do that right now. I can see this being an actual gut punch. Like, for a mother, I can see this being an absolute gut punch. Like, I gotta get home. But again, this is what they signed up for. That's the troubling aspect of all this. It's like, yes, it's like anxiety driving point right here. I cannot imagine. But at the same time, this is technically what we signed up for. We're all going to go out there for the sake of finishing this so that we can protect what's at home. Whoever survives will go back home and raise a family. They were ready for this, unfortunately. Right, let's go. Yes, let's go. There was nothing else they could do. Roxy didn't need anyone to tell her what it was they could do. They had to get the information they had to the people who needed it. She was afraid for their children back at Shiraya. That was natural. If it were possible, she and Edis were both scrambled to get home. Both of them fought that urge, and they got moving. They hurried to where Rudius was, the superb village. Yeah, which I kind of wonder at this point how far that is. I think they mentioned at some point how much gap are between each of them. But I would imagine probably like maybe a day's journey or so. Ugh. And finally, Zenoba perspective. Zenoba was panicking. Rudius hadn't come back. The hunting party was ready to march, and the day of the departure drew near. Rudius had set off in high spirits for the village. Zenoba knew that he used all the tricks that he had to bring the soldiers around, and they'd all make peace. Zenoba wondered if negotiations broke down. The message on the contact tablet said it was a success. It had been signed by Orsted, but Zenoba couldn't start suspecting him this late in the stage. But what happened? Attacked by assassins on the way? They could have run into some other trouble on the road. Surely they didn't take in the sights of the second city. That was absurd. The fact remained that if nothing changed, the hunting party would set off in 10 days' time. Zenoba wondered if he should wait or act. Eventually, he decided to act. He'd teleport to the superb village and find out what was going on. Having this in mind, he didn't delay. He took Ginger and Julie and hurried to the hut where the circle was. However, the light was gone in both the circle and the tablet.
This isn't good.
After a few seconds of thought, he reached his conclusion.
Ginger.
Yes, sir.
We're going to the superb village.
Roger that. What about the second city?
We're not going through it. If our enemy is here, that's where they'll be.
Zenoba exited the hut, then reached into his pocket to pull something out. It was a whistle, a gold whistle in the shape of a dragon. Without hesitation, he blew it. It emitted a comforting trill. Nothing happened. No one came.
Drat, we are too far away. Ginger, Julie, was there a monument of the seven great powers nearby?
Not that I remember. I didn't see one. Yeah, that was... I thought that was just so cool. Like literally Zenoba goes in there and he's like,
this isn't good. Something's happening.
Goes outside, blows a whistle. And I was expecting like Armafi just shows up out of nowhere, but no, it's like,
oh damn, he's not...
I legit thought that he set it up next to a monument of the seven great powers and that this was like a really bold move right here. But no, it's like,
damn, too far away.
It doesn't hurt to try. I mean, there could have been one nearby and they just didn't see it. There was more than one person who could operate teleportation circles. Zenoba had thought he'd call Petagus and ask him for help, but it hadn't worked.
Fine. Tell me if you see one on the way. We are heading to the superb village at once.
Yes, sir. Everyone would converge on the superb village. Perhaps it would be soon enough. And that is volume 24. Another one down. 2 more volumes to go. My gosh. What a What a very, very uncomfortable set of chapters here. Really, again, everything kind of hitting the fan. Granted, it's still salvageable. Like, even at this point, it's still salvageable. It's just, yes, Rudy is in a bad state. You know Rudius is going to die. Somebody, again, I think Ors had saved him, is going to restore his arms, bring him back to the superb village. It is interesting that they're really already lining it up here that everybody is going to go back to the superb village. Everybody's going to rush back there. And again, it seems like everything is setting up that the Brahil Kingdom, along with the Ogre Tribe and Geese, is going to come to attack the superb village. And yes, it kind of is interesting that specifically Galfalion and Alexander was told to not go back to the superb village, to go back to the group so the group can come down at once and destroy them. And I think everything with like them attacking Rudius is probably just to kind of give them a bit of a setback, and so they can get the group together and come in there and destroy them. Because again, it almost feels like they could have killed them. They could have killed them. And alongside that, I do kind of agree with Edis that I think that Sylphie is going to be the one to get back to the town to protect the family. That you're probably going to have Sylphie over here, hopefully with at least everybody that she's gathered over there. Like, I mean, she already had Isolde and Ghislaine. Not sure if she'll get the new sword god with them, but they're going to at least be able to go with her. And she's going to have to go to that town. And yes, that's at that point she's going to realize this is gone, or maybe see the attack happening at the time, get over there and help. And yeah, I can totally see, hopefully finally having the Sacred Beast stepping up to protect them, seeing that in action. I kind of wonder if Lilia would be able to get in contact with Petagus at that time. Again, that whistle's not going to work unless she gets out there to a place to use it. So I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case there, unless, again, they set something up there, which could have been. So despite my thought process halfway through this volume, where I was really thinking this could turn into being a skirmish thing, where like two people fight two people, one person finds somebody elsewhere, it does look like it's going to turn into a big, massive like fight on two fronts at least. At least two fronts, it'll be a massive fight. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it goes from here, but I guess that comes down to where does this go in Andrew's tier list? I don't think this is gonna go very high. I'm gonna be blunt before I even look at the tier list. I don't think this is gonna be very high. This is a good volume, but definitely not up there. So what we had in this volume is it opened up with them having the initial meeting about what to do in Brahil Kingdom. Like, again, they found out about Brahil Kingdom. They're in the office, and they all come to an agreement what they're going to do going forward. We're going to go marching in there. Here's what everybody's going to do. Then you had, yes, Ariel sends over Shandel and Doga. They meet the group, and that's when Marius goes off to go to the kingdom, find the informant, goes down to Superds, find the Superds. Really great reunion with Rizurd. And that's where things kind of went a little bit for me. I felt like everything around Rizurd, again, it all is logically to the story that he has been telling, that Refugin has been telling up to this point, with, again, the man god seemingly putting a lot of things into play to take out the Superd themselves. So it all ties up story-wise and when it's explained, but it felt my argument really around this stuff is really kind of bringing old characters back and to make them enemies, which is kind of frustrating to me. But yeah, everything around the whole Vita dream sequence felt very repetitive, even though some of those segments I had a lot of fun with like Aisha and all that stuff. Obviously, the whole thing with him running into Zenith in the dream was super impactful to me, really broke me. And then getting into the whole stuff with the plague, which I thought was really fantastic with Cliff. I love that whole segment with Cliff stepping up there and, being a broski like Cliff always is. Then getting into Norn kind of coming into this whole scenario, getting into Vita's history, which was really cool. I love the history stuff. And then this whole massive downfall. B. I'm going B. I'm going B with volume. I'm going to go B with this volume. And again, as per usual, this is ranking them amongst each other. When you're ranking the volumes of Mushoku Tensei against each other, this falls probably in the B category. Maybe I would probably say B minus. Probably B minus. I almost want to say C plus, but it's way better than a lot of those volumes in C. So I would probably say B minus for me on this one. B minus, C plus, somewhere around there. But That's my ranking. I'll be curious what everybody else's ranking is. As usual, we'll have a poll on the screen when that comes up, so then check the poll. But I think I'm pretty comfy at a B- for volume 24. With that said, that is another volume down. Thank you guys so much for joining me through this journey through volume 24. I hope you guys will join me through volume 25 and then volume 26 and then every damn side volume series and whatnot that people keep asking if I'm going to do, which yes, I'm doing. I hope you guys will join me for that. As per usual, greatly appreciate you guys dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys had a great Mushoku Monday. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, and yes, greatly appreciate everybody support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. But yes, until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable sense of. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable. There was sea folks on offer. There was seafood on offer here.
Arted's woman.
What's a female orc?